Hey, welcome back, fam. Uh, we're having a conversation today with one of my good friends and co-conspirators, Dave Barcos from NorthBank Innovations.
Good to see you, man.
Give us
Excited for this.
a little. What is NorthBank? What are you working on? Why is it important?
Yeah, North Bank has been kind of a song stuck in my head for a long time. As a side hustle, I was doing a lot of events, pulling people together from the startup community, doing just meetup groups and events, and starting to talk about cool things that the tech was going on in tech. And really, about April of last year, kind of put a line in the sand that we started to see a bunch of momentum in the community. And we said this needs to be a physical space. It needs to be an actual place you can walk in, set up a desk, and find other great people. And so, yeah, it's been a hell of a journey. September, we landed a spot here at the Vancouver Innovation Center, which is the old HP campus. Um, and the new developers that purchased it and are redeveloping it kind of welcomed us in with open arms because they want to get innovative, cool companies in here. And so we're working it there from the start as a startup incubator, and they're bringing some other cool people in.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, I mean, NorthBank Innovation is essentially it's a startup, but it's also a nonprofit startup in a way.
Yeah.
Um, Seems like there'd be an easier way to make money.
There definitely is easier ways to make money.
Legally too, some of them.
Legally.
So
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, we started. I actually tried a bunch of different ways, kind of looking at what was going on, and I think what we figured out is that the people that need the help the most are the least likely to pay, and it really kind of ends up being a tax. I really wanted cost not to be a barrier, um, and so a profit model got in the way of that a little bit. And as a nonprofit, we get to go out to people who want to see the community better, that want to see startups succeed, and so they're helping because it's part of the rising tide that lifts up the entire area.
Yeah, right. Good, strong companies help create good paying jobs, which, create opportunities for everybody in the community.
Yep.
Tax dollars get rolling in,
Yeah.
things get funded that wouldn't. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, why in Vancouver though? Why now? Why? I mean, there are
Yeah. Yeah.
similar situated organizations and similar. Why do we need something like this in Vancouver,
Yeah.
Washington?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Vancouver's been kind of a sleepy little town. It's been a drive-through town, part of the Portland metropolitan area, and that dynamic has really changed past COVID. Got new developments that have come into town. The waterfront development has been a huge catalyst. Um, but the tide has really changed, and the city's standing up instead of being a bedroom community, it's standing up on its own. And with that means that there's more people moving here. There's more opportunity for new companies coming in, new startups coming in because of the energy and the tech talent that we have up here. And so part of the reason to lean in so hard starting last year was because we were seeing all the evidence of that. We're seeing more really high impact startups that were starting to be successful here, and more early stage founders that were looking for help and not having to cross the river, not trying to become part of that hour long commute that it's become.
Yes, yes, yes. Bridge traffic is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just chop. Let's just get into it then.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me a little bit about you know what are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing currently with some of the earliest of stage companies, where
Yeah.
this is individuals that have they're past the I have an idea, maybe they've done a friends and family round, um, they're working on a an MVP, minimal viable product,
Yep.
but like what are they currently seeing?
Yeah, the hardest part for probably 90% of the startups that I see is they're focused internally, they're not focused externally, right? They're working on the product, they're not working on the market. It's too easy to, be a hammer looking for a nail, right? Um, there's a ton of technology that's a lot more accessible, AI obviously being a huge piece of it. But the technology piece is easy, the market part is hard, right? Whether it's reaching them, whether it's understanding what they actually need, that's really difficult. And so I think that's even more so a challenge now, because we've kind of broken distribution channels and marketing channels. So it's a lot more difficult to reach larger markets. So I'm seeing a lot of trends of people that are working really heavily to open up niche markets where they've got domain expertise, whether it's construction or medical or whatever it is, and they've got some real value to offer. And they start out working really small, building something that really works well with them or with that small group. But yeah, if they're not working in the market, they're kind of sitting on the sidelines. You're not really in the game.
I see. Okay. Um, so how have you been able to help some of these founders and early idea companies kind of get in the game, so to speak? Like what give us a couple of use cases, a
Yeah.
couple of case study.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, here's the thing: you find this when there's a perception of going to investors that investors are because they have so much money. They've got to be smart, and they've got to be connected, right? And those things don't always end up true, right? And so there's this mythology about I'm going to get somebody that's a connected advisor as well, right? And one of the things that I find is um, I think we've become good at helping people advance with what they know, not what we know.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example of somebody who's trying to work through a market. And I asked them about their go-to-market strategy. And it's a pretty generic term that you hear all the time. And they were working in the healthcare field, and they had a SaaS product that they were trying to develop. And I said, okay, so who would you talk to? And they gave me this definition. It was kind of a blanket definition. And I said, okay, out of that blanket definition, who do you know that's one of those? And they're
I
like,
didn't.
well, I don't. And I said, well, then why are you working there? What are you going to do to break into that?
Yeah.
And we kind of reframed it. And I asked her again, and wasn't their name, but I said, oh, that's Jenny and Steve and Ron. I'm like, I know them. And I'm like, then why aren't you talking to them? I'm like, your first job is to find people that are going to give you feedback, that are going to work with you on this journey about launching the product and developing the value. So let's not talk about go to market as the way you talk to an investor. Let's talk about what you're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was about talking to those people and building that, circuitous loop of finding out and improving and everything else. And so I think we have the ability to kind of ground strategies that people hear. Like I said, there's mythology all the time of we think we know what to do, but we don't really know how to put it in play.
Yeah. Do you ever run? I run into this sometimes. I'm curious if you do too. If it's just the energy I'm giving out. Where the founder, they fall almost too in love with their product, and they think it is the absolute solution for everything, and instead of and I think I think the origins of that come from the fact that we always tell founders like what's the problem you have, and then try to solve it. And then I think sometimes we take it too far, and they think that their idea is it's worth 10 times what it really is. They don't take feedback.
Well, the other thing we do is we hammer people with this persona of a founder of Steve Jobs, right? Which is gonna throw a chair across the room and be a total asshole to people and drive his vision.
You can't fucking swear on this podcast, by the way.
Won't fucking do it again.
Okay,
promise. But that's the other thing is what we don't realize is it is there's reciprocity in what you're delivering, right? And so you're going out with value and extracting value and giving value at the same time, and that doesn't happen if you just kind of bulldoze your idea. Right. And so people come in and they say, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. And I'm like, well, it may not be the best. And you got to be open to find out, because, you've got to be vulnerable enough to find out what needs to change, because unless you're going to pay for the product. Products only work at scale.
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of people that buy it
Yeah.
and understand and see its value.
Yeah. I would say like there's a few things in investing's one of them. I think creating a product for an early stage company is another one of them where like it's kind of this pendulum swinging back and forth between arrogance and humility, right? Because you got to have arrogance enough to like, oh, I can make a better shoe than Nike, or I can make
Yep.
a better software application than Salesforce, or I can do
Yeah.
better than fill in the blank, whoever the 800-pound gorilla is. But then you need to have some humility at times to take feedback from your initial customers or clients, to take feedback from your UX design team or your engineering team.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I think, and truthfully, the journey of being a founder and growing a startup it's a personal journey,
Yeah.
right? As much as anything, and I don't think people understand they need to grow to be something more when their company has to grow to be something more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a hard lesson. I always say not arrogance and humility. I say arrogance and ignorance, because I want you to be a little bit. I want you to have a little bit of swagger, right? Because it's really hard to coach somebody off the shelf, off the bench, and you also, it's good that you don't know the rules. You're gonna break rules. Some people they're not rule breakers, but they'll break rules that they didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's why outsiders bring innovation inside of things.
Yeah. I think that's why sometimes you see these folks with, a different like training or skill set come into a new industry and have such wild successes because they're just looking at the problem from
That's right.
A different side of their brain or different because as much as we've all I think pretend at times that we don't do this, we all fall victim, I think, to this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
Luggage has always had only two wheels, things like that. So I think
Yeah.
how you get those like true innovations sometimes is bring in somebody from a different looking at a problem from a different angle.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think absolutely. I think you have to, because any market that matures starts to gravitate towards doing things the same.
Yeah.
And that means profit margins shrink, right? Innovator's dilemma, right? It puts us as susceptible from the outside, right? And somebody who doesn't have the constraints of those things, the challenge is coming up with is kind of unbridling your thinking, right? Most people are thinking up Me Too ideas. They're little innovations, right? You just mentioned the luggage, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. What if it was a travel-on that had 4 wheels and then it could travel on its own? And that's not innovation. That's just, hey, guess what? We can push it instead of, have to drag it.
Right.
And instead of, what if it was a hovercraft or something? What if we didn't need luggage? What if we beamed it somewhere, right? And so we don't, we just get so constrained in our thinking, and I think that's part of the huge problem too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. It was a fake. It was a fake. I'm sure it was AI generated. No, it was actually before ChatGPT came out. There was this poster of Johnson Johnson baby oil, and it said from like 1970, and it shows the cap off, and then it shows one current day Johnson Johnson baby oil, and the only thing that says American innovation at its finest, and all it was the spout was like 3 times as big. It's
right.
like I think at times industries do that when
Yeah,
you see. I think that's why some of these like large companies that have managed to kind of avoid that trap,
Yeah.
they always say like, well, if anybody's going to take our market share, it's going to be us, right?
That's
I'm
right.
not letting somebody else take our market share. And we've all seen the classic examples of that. Not Kodak developing the digital camera and then sitting on it because it would hurt margins and film. I mean, Barnes and Noble and Borders having could have squashed Amazon or acquired Amazon very early.
Mm-hmm.
They missed it, and there was it's all fiefdom protecting the the traditional channel. So
yeah, I think that's what's really interesting. I think a lot of people don't understand it. Is I say a lot of people play business, and one of the things that I never forget, and I kind of have to kind of remind founders all the time, is in this early stage you're not business. You have to be a business because there's economics to what you're doing, but it's human nature, and you're changing human nature, and that means your own, and it means the markets, right? If you're building something different, you have to acknowledge those human factors, or you will not be able to change people's habits, just the basic little habits. I think we were talking to somebody today about just snapping his receipts, and that he's got this new application, this new software platform that they're using, and he says it's so easy. All I have to do is take the picture or text, or use a text thing to say I just purchased this, and it'll match it up and everything else. And he's like, can't do it. My habit is, they ask me if I want to print a receipt, I take it, I put it back, and I later will go back in and I'll fill out my expense report. Right? It's like, it's human nature.
Yeah.
And we just forget how hard it is to change.
Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah.
I think another one is there's a lawsuit on or dispute, I should say, between Apple and ChatGPT, OpenAI, about the placement of basically the placement of the software application, and ChatGPT is saying essentially you're not prioritizing us, and Apple's saying, well, it doesn't really matter, and but it goes to show you that how powerful that
Google
platform
didn't complain.
is. Right. It just goes to show you how powerful the platform is. That, Apple is still a gatekeeper with software down, even if it's a good mousetrap and even if it's all that. So breaking out of some of that's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give, a founder who's working on something that's in a tough, competitive industry, and one of these industries where it's kind of David versus Goliath, and because one of the lazy things that I hear investors in some of our communities saying at times is like, oh, well, Google could just come in and just squash you with that. General Motors could just come in and do this, and then your business out. And the reality is, like, the business history is riddled with examples of how, those companies could have and they didn't. For one reason or another, they didn't.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful space that these founders need to kind of weave in and out of and navigate as they're building something special.
Yeah. I think one of the things you have to think about too is what business do you want out of it, right? We were talking about it today in our session, right? Is the trajectory of your company matters, right? You can be a small business and you can build a lifestyle business to 3-5 million, and you've got an income for as long as you want to do it, right? No harm, no foul, everything else. If you want to be a $50 million company, if you want to be a $100 million company, you have to do something different. So I think understanding that your idea and the nature of your idea and startup is a $50 million company, right? Then you take very different risks, you take different strategies and everything else. So I think getting really clear on what you're building and what size you want to build to, I think is really important. The other thing I say, and I think Paul Graham said it originally, do things that don't scale, right? The idea that fall in love with the person and what they're fixing and the problem that you're fixing. Don't fall in love with your solution for it. Because your solution is going to have to change.
Yeah, sure.
Right? As soon as it gets in the market, you're going to find people that are going to use it differently, and it's going to expose different things. And if it's your baby, if you're too protective of it, that's going to cause a conflict, right?
Yeah,
so, fall in love with the problem, fall in love with the people that are struggling with it, and find ways to serve them best, because that's what gives you better traction.
Right.
And then start smaller, right? If there's an entrenched player, find an underserved market that those larger players are not serving well. And it could be around a feature. There's plenty of stories of companies that have made a feature and started into built something larger that kind of carved out revenue and profits out of a larger company.
Yeah. Well, it's always fascinating me when I talk with younger people, and I'm getting that age where, like, almost now everybody's younger than me, which is a weird kind of place to be. But they just don't understand some of the problems that had to get solved from, you had to make certain phone calls on the weekends because they were too expensive. or you had to, or late at night, or
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you wanted to call your friend, you had to find a phone and then have change and then like all of these problems like been solved. And I think that's one of the
Yeah.
problems and
Yeah.
one of the why sometimes we have a hard time seeing the future is that
Yeah.
there's all these peripheral industries that build around it, and then ultimately it's the consumer who ends up coming up with their own use cases for your product and stuff you never really intended on. It's like, if you
Yeah.
look at without the smartphone in everybody's pocket,
Yeah.
things like DoorDash and Uber and all these different multi-billion-dollar
That's right.
businesses wouldn't exist
Yeah.
if smartphone market penetration had 10% market share.
Yep.
Right. And the fact that we all have these devices that are probably more powerful than what
Yep.
flew people to the moon at some point
Yeah.
in our pockets, like billions and billions of dollars of market cap wouldn't
Yeah.
exist for all these industries that
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also there's another book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, right? The Hard Thing About Hard Things basically says, yeah, don't imagine that you're going to just walk in there, waltz in with a quick solution. And I always challenge founders to to do better, to think harder, to think deeper about what they're trying to do too. Because you mentioned at one point, or we were talking about a pendulum, right? Of how things are more technology, right? You're starting to see people, you know, a new startup could be not your phone. It could have something to do with, the next, I don't know, Coachella or something, right?
sure.
The move away from the digital technology could be that startup, right? We're so enamored with technology right now, and the reason that we have leaned in so hard is because investors told us that's what they wanted. There was this huge glut of money because the multiples were massive, right?
Yeah.
It scaled exponentially compared to the personnel or the infrastructure that you had to put in place. And so they were going, hell yeah, we want more of that, right? But that wasn't the case before we really started leaning into all this digital work.
Yeah.
SaaS wasn't a thing, right? And
Yeah.
and so I think we're gonna see new types of startups that are leaning in that aren't going to be those same sorts of returns.
Yeah.
And so I think there's new, and I think we talked about it before. Hardware, hard tech is going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back.
Even some of
Things
the
like
AI
that.
CEO muckety mucks have talked about that recently.
Yep.
I also think, like, I think there's a lot of advantages to being the old guy in the room. One of them is the fact that
Yeah.
in some ways we've heard the song before, right?
Yeah.
We were, every company was falling over themselves in the early 2000s to put a .com at their, fast forward a little bit more time, then it was, oh, what's our crypto play, right? And now you're seeing all these companies just slap new lipstick on, trying to say, well,
Yeah.
we're an AI thing now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, we kind of know how all like I'm an investment guy, right? So I look at it and I say, okay, at some point, and returns are going to get muted in that space
Yep.
because too much capital is chasing what was a good idea 10 years
Yeah.
ago or 5 years ago, and now is reckless, foolish, and going to lead to tears.
Yeah.
Like my last 3 marriages, but yeah. So I think that's that's what looks really smart early on from the bright blue flame thinkers looks kind of dumb in hindsight. And that I have no doubts that the AI crowd in with capital is going to end any different than the crypto for some of those early investors and
No.
.coms. And
but
yet it can still change the industry and change the way we work, live, and play.
That's exactly it. I was going to say that I think one thing we learned out of the .com was, throw pets.com, was going to own the world, and all the people that kind of leaned into it. So when the crash happened, when the bust happened, what happened is there was some substantial money, and people turned their eye to it as an option, and so it went underground, and that gave life to Web 2.0, right? Yep. And so the infrastructure, the technology, right, all that stuff advanced in a really meaningful way, and what came back was really viable and sustainable, right? And so that was the next evolution of e-commerce, and I think the same thing's going to happen out of AI. I think we're going to see all this flashy stuff, and people are going to be all enamored with it, and we're going to have people that are just doing crazy ass stuff that doesn't need to get done. and ultimately, I think that'll collapse a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think there's some substantial work. There's obviously some substantial work that's being done with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that'll come out of it.
I think that collapse or that inefficiency it's dope though, because um, that's just that's how we find creative use cases for stuff. So I think about like without Starbucks and without this big brand that's throwing a bunch of money at marketing these $6 cups of burnt coffee, um, it wouldn't have allowed for these small micro just roasters to come up and come right behind them with like a product that is much better.
Yep.
So that product just continued to get niche, right?
That's right.
And yet at the same time, I bet you there was early investors that said nobody's going to pay this money for amount of coffee. And then as soon as Keurig and these fancy $8,000 espresso machines at home, why would somebody pay $6 for a cup on the road when they can do it at home, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's another kind of lazy thinking that we see in all these industries where like every house has a kitchen in it, yet restaurant industry is alive and vibrant.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe my theory doesn't hold for the movie theaters these days, but even that there's still pockets of theaters that are busy.
But I think that creates opportunity, right? I mean, at any time there's a loser in the market, there's an opportunity to be had. So at some point, somebody reimagines what a movie theater will be. Right. Movie theater is an asset. It's a real estate asset for the most part, but it's an experience. It's a group thing. So maybe somebody comes in and does something different. They've tried to innovate it, but they innovate badly, right? They want to advertise, or they want to put the symphony or the ballet, right, and try and add live streaming and stuff like that. They've tried to innovate, but nobody's come in and said, "Oh, let's rethink what that is." And so I think that creates market opportunity. I think it's a matter of most people don't have a larger perspective on markets and trends. And I think as an investor, you start to see some of that. You start to see more people kind of coming up with these little kind of blip ideas inside of them. And you realize the ones that are moving are the ones that are kind of addressing larger concerns.
Yeah.
Whether it's
structural.
Yeah, whether it's structural or even technology too. So.
Yeah, true. All right. Well, this has been awesome. I mean, I always love the chance to talk with you. We do it usually via text late at night with a series of me saying, "What are you doing up so late? Why are you texting me?" And you saying, "What are you doing up so late? And why are you responding?" And we're like, "Fuck, I'll see you tomorrow at the office."
That's it.
So always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights.
All right. Love it. Appreciate it, man.